Good morning. Let's talk about graphing sine and cosine functions. These are the last two problems on the assignment from yesterday. So this is a sine and a cosine function in standard form. So the cosine function is orange and the sine function is blue. So if you notice, every time the sine function is in standard form, it goes through 0, 0. If you can remember that, then you can go ahead and graph. And then again, remember that your cosine function always starts at the top of your range, okay? All right, and then you would take your period of your function and you would go and divide it by 4 if you wanted to graph it. So it's pretty simple to graph. Let me go ahead and draw a picture real quick. If you had a standard sine function, okay, in standard form, it is going to be a 2 pi period. So what we do, we divide it in half, call that pi, divide each part in half, that's going to be pi over 2, that's going to be, well really, I'm going to do it the way that guy did in that video. I like the way he did that. So let's go do that. Started at 0, 0, you know you're going to end at 0, 0. A sine function always goes up, comes down, and then goes back up again. Now you go and divide your period into 4 parts. So here's the middle point right there, that's pi. Then you just take each part and you call that, it doesn't matter if you can label that or not, well or not, but at least you know it's divided into 4 parts. Okay, so let's do 2 of those problems. Here you go, write a cosine equation for the graph at the right. So you can't really see where it's crossing up here. I know it's a cosine, so I know it would normally start at the top of my range. All right, this one's going to start over here, but I don't really know what that is. So let's go and find another part here to figure out. Well, first, let's figure out our midline. Our midline seems to be right about there. It's cutting the graph in half from up and down. And so that's going to be at -1. So that's your vertical shift is at -1. All right, and then we're going to go figure out, what can we figure out next? Let's go figure out our amplitude. Your amplitude is only half of that whole entire range, all right? So the amplitude is going to be from -1 to 1 gives us 2. So our amplitude is 2. And now we're going to go, now we got to do the harder stuff. So now we got to figure out our phase shift and our period. I'm going to do the period first because I'm going to look, where does it cross? Let's say where it crosses right here. Okay, this would be our starting point. All right, where is it going to cross again? So I start it wherever it is at 0, 0. All right, no matter what the midline is or anything. So where is it doing the same thing? We know this is our midpoint at 2 pi, so it's going to be at the end of the period at 4 pi. So our period is 4 pi. All right, now we're going to go and figure out our phase shift. So if this is a cosine function, all right, it's going to be normally, now remember we're at the midline, it would start at the top of the range. Well, that is 3 pi. That's a little bit too far to say that that's going to be our phase shift. So let's go the other way and see where it would probably cross over here. It looks like it's going to probably touch right here at -pi. Now make sure that your period is still 4 pi here. So if I went from -pi to 3 pi, is that still 4 pi? Yes, it is. So I'm going to call my phase shift -pi. If you call it 3 pi, it's no big deal. It just changes some of your numbers a little bit, but it's still understandable. All right, now let's go and figure out what our equations are. Okay, so our amplitude is 2, we got that. Our vertical shift is -1, so that's k if you use that formula. So remember, our formula is going to look like this. Y equals A, and then we're going to do, we do k, oh, I did the k wrong, because k is going to be h. All right, k theta minus c, I'm sorry, plus c, and then plus h. Not really a fan of this formula. I like this formula better, to just do that and then that, and then you do that, and then you make that the k at the end. But since I taught it to you like this, let's go with this. In algebra 2, they use the other formula. All right, so k, we don't know. We know h is -1. All right, now we've got to go find our period. So let's go figure out the period. Now the formula for period is 2 pi over k. And now we know that the period is 4 pi. So we just basically solve for k. So once you solve for k, you should get a 2 in your denominator. See how those are equivalent fractions? Or you could solve it another way. All right, so k is 2. Let's go and find the, what are we finding next? Our phase shift. All right, phase shift is at the very end. So we want to go and look at that. So our phase shift is -pi. And the formula for phase shift is the opposite of c over k. Well, we already know k. So k is, what is k? 2. All right, let's go solve for c. So we've got -2 pi is equal to -c. All right, so then c is going to be 2 pi. So c is 2 pi. All right, from here, now you got to go write your equation. You're just going to pop all those things into the formula. Y equals 2 times 2 theta plus 2 pi, has a lot of 2's. All right, -1. There's your equation. Now, there you go. Now you could plug some numbers in to check it, or you could check it with your graphing calculator today. I'm not sure if I'm going to let you do it on your test. All right, let's try the next one, right? The sine function for this. So let's go look at this real quick. Let me pause this for a second. Okay, I had to get that little blue square off of there. Anyway, here we go. So let's go really quickly again. So it's a sine function. All right, a sine function would always start at 0, 0. This one's going to be kind of easy. All right, so we've got, remember, in standard form, it's going to look like this, k theta plus c plus h. Okay, so the amplitude, well, let's start with our midline. Our midline seems to be at 3, so that's our vertical shift. I'm just going to put those numbers in there as I go. And then our amplitude is only going up halfway between 3 and 4, and it's only going down halfway between 2 and 3. So our amplitude is going to be 1/2. So A is 1/2. Then we're going to have, let's see what we can find next. Let's find the period. So at 0, 0, it seems to be that we're in standard form, and that's going to be very nice. So when does it cross again? That's going to be your midpoint, and that's going to be the next part of the period. So it looks like the period is pi. So the period is pi. All right, now let's go find our phase shift. So in standard form, a sine function crosses at the midline and 0. And look at that, it is crossing at the midline and 0. So it looks like we have no phase shift. All right, so we have no phase shift on that. So that's kind of going to make it maybe a little bit easier. All right, let's go plug these into and figure out what we got. We got amplitude, we've got vertical shift, we need to find period. So 2 pi over k is equal to the period, which is pi. All right, so now we're going to just go solve for k. Once we multiply both sides by k, look what happens. 2 pi is equal to k pi. So I'm going to guess, and I'm pretty right, I think it's going to be 2 because it's obvious. All right, and now let's go find our phase shift. Well, our phase shift is 0. So we're not going to really have anything. So -c over k, really, it's going to be 0. So we're not going to really have anything for that. Okay, so let's go plug these into our formula. And we get y equals 1/2 is our amplitude. K is 2. Then we have a theta. We don't have a c, so you can just close that off. And then your h is +3. There you go. There's your equation for that. All right. We're going to work on reviewing for the rest of the test.